Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to share with you another amazing recipe and we are going to make a stunning crepe cake. This cake is inspired by Lady M boutique in New York. This is where I discovered it and we are going to make it matcha. It will be filled with matcha crepes as well as matcha cream. It will taste delicious, not too intense in matcha flavor but still gorgeous and quite original. So I hope you will love this recipe. So let's get right into it. Okay, so first of all, we are going to start with our beautiful and thick matcha custard that will go between the layers of crepe. And I'm going to, first of all, heat my milk. This is whole milk, and I'm going to heat it until it reaches almost a boil. And then we will work on the egg yolks. I'm using quite a lot of egg yolks, as you can see, since we're making quite a lot of custard. And I'm going to add to that some granulated white sugar as well as cornstarch, just to make sure that everything is thick, and I'm going to mix thoroughly with a whisk. Once you have a thick and smooth egg mixture, you're going to introduce the hot milk into it, whisking constantly. This means that we are going to temper the eggs and make sure that we don't have scrambled eggs, so make sure you do this carefully and adding a bit of milk at a time and whisking quite intensely. Once all the milk is incorporated, you're going to put everything back on the stove and let it cook for about 5 to 10 minutes. And as you can see, I added the matcha here. I would have actually preferred to add it before, but I forgot to add it simply. And make sure that you add it at this stage along the cornstarch. That way you will have less lumps of matcha in your final product, since mine was quite lumpy, but it still tasted great and you couldn't really taste the matcha lumps. But I just want to warn you that it's actually best to add it before. And then you're going to mix everything constantly with your whisk until you have a very thick custard and that it reaches the bubble. My custard is super thick, so now I'm just going to add some vanilla extract at the last minute and mix very well with my whisk. And then we can basically cover it with a plastic wrap and let it cool completely, first at room temperature and then in the fridge for at least 2 or 3 hours or until it's completely cooled down. Once we have the custard, it is time to make the crepe batter, and it's amazing and super easy to make. A very rustic French recipe basically that we are going to flavor with some matcha powder. And I'm going to first of all start with my dry ingredients. I'm using here of course some all-purpose flour, to which I'm going to add some cornstarch just to make sure that it's actually lighter than regular crepes. And then we'll also add the matcha powder, of course. And I'm just going to mix everything with a whisk just to make sure that we don't have those lumps. Next, I'm just going to break my eggs and mix them with some vanilla extract, and then we will add just a little bit of butter and a few tablespoons of sugar, since your matcha powder is a bit bitter, so we need to add a bit of sweetness to it. Perfect, so now I'm just going to add half of our dry ingredients, and then I will add half of my milk and then the remaining dry ingredients and finally the remaining milk until I have a proper consistency and that you cannot see any lumps, and it should be actually gorgeous. Everything is smooth, so now I'm just going to cover our crepe batter with some plastic wrap and just let it rest completely at room temperature for about an hour or so. It really needs to rest before we actually cook the crepes, so we'll just be a bit patient and then we'll cook them. Our crepe batter is now ready to be cooked in our pan, so I'm just going to grease my pan. You can use either butter or vegetable oil, and then you are just going to cook your crepes. I suggest cooking them as thin as possible. It is very important for the overall taste and texture of your cake. But as you can see, mine were a bit too thick because my crepe batter was actually a bit thick. If you want to thin it out, you can of course add a bit more milk or even water. So I'm just going to repeat this process and cook all of my crepes, and then I will let them cool completely, covered with some plastic wrap once again so that they don't dry out, and then we can work on the custard. As you can see, our custard is super thick and beautiful. I'm just going to lighten it up with some whipped cream. So I just whipped some heavy whipping cream with just a tiny little amount of sugar since our custard is not that sweet. And then I'm going to introduce it to our custard to make things a bit lighter and more moussey. It is time to assemble the cake, and I'm basically going to alternate between my crepe layers and my custard, and you're just going to use all of your crepes and it will create a thick and beautiful cake. Once my cake is all set, I'm just going to put it in the freezer for about 15 to 30 minutes or until it's a bit more hard and easier to handle. Since then, I'm going to cut the sides of our cake, and this time I'm using a pair of scissors and not a knife. It's pretty unconventional, but it works really well just to make the sides a bit smoother. Once everything is clean, I'm just going to add a bit more cream on the sides of our cake to make things a bit more pretty. And then I will also add some matcha powder on top of our cake. And as you can see, I did this with a tablespoon because I didn't have a proper sift at the time, but I suggest using a sift if you have one. And there you go, it wasn't that complicated to make this stunning cake. It is delicious in taste but also in flavor, very close to the Lady M boutique crepe cake. The only difference is that their cake is a bit lighter, if I'm being honest. It's only because my crepes were too thick, but if you make sure that your crepes are very thin, you're gonna end up with the lightest cake ever. It is so delicate and perfect for every occasion, tea, breakfast, dessert, anytime really. So I hope you enjoyed this video and that you're going to recreate this recipe. You can find the entire list of ingredients in the description box down below if you want to do so, as well as my social media, so Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and give this video a like and a comment if you want to talk. I'll be very happy to respond, and I will see you very soon for another amazing recipe. Bye!